Welcome to the Ultimate Music Teacher's Productivity and Profitability podcast. I'm your host, Glory St. Germain. Tune in to discover how you can unleash your teaching potential and turn your passion for music education into profit. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Ultimate Music Teacher's Productivity and Profitability podcast. My guest today is very dear to my heart as I've worked with Bree Noble in various capacities, and it is my true honor to have her as a special guest today. So we've all heard of the term starving artist, and today, you lucky listeners, are going to hear from the expert on how we can turn that around. So Bree Noble, former director of finance turned singer-songwriter and founder of Women of Substance Radio. She is really all about empowering the female artists. And she's also the host of the Profitable Musician Show. She guides musicians to diverse income streams. And Bree has also authored a best-selling book, congratulations, Bree, with her Profitable Musicians Framework. And I'm so excited. She really enlightens conferences and offers educational programs, including Release Concierge. And she is the musician's profit path to success. So please welcome Bree. How are you doing?
I am so good, Glory. Thank you for that awesome introduction.
Yes. Well, when I've just seen you for, many years and in your success path and your journey from being a director of finance to a successful musician, it really is quite remarkable. And perhaps you could just walk us through some of the key moments or realizations that led you to make this transition.
Yeah. So I would say I was a musician first before I was a finance person. The finance thing was kind of that thing in my back pocket when I was in college thinking, I'm a music major, I'm a vocal major, what the heck am I going to do with this? My school really didn't prepare me at all. They made me the most amazing musician, but they didn't teach me anything about business and they didn't give me any paths toward careers. And so I was like, well, I better figure this out for myself. So, I kind of like numbers. So I decided to go and get a second degree in business and focus on accounting and management, marketing, that kind of stuff. And so when I left school, I got married right away, within 6 months after leaving school. I moved to a totally new place where I didn't know anyone. And so it was going to take me a while to build up connections when it came to music. So I'm I better get an actual job in an office to help support us because my husband was on fellowship. He was in a doctoral program for becoming an English professor. And so I just started, going out there and got myself an accounting job, and I moved up within the ranks there and then managed to become director of finance at an opera company, which was so cool because, I could work in the arts and the music industry, but do my finance thing, right? But the double-edged sword of it was that I was writing paychecks for all of these opera artists that were living their dream and doing what they wanted to do in music. And I was just in the back writing paychecks for them. And yeah, I got to sit in the front and watch the shows and go to the fancy parties, which was cool. But I was still feeling that void of not pursuing my own artistic needs and the things that I felt God had gifted me with. And so I was kind of always trying to do this stuff on the side. I was joining all these bands and they just mostly blew up, which as often bands do, just trying to find other people to collaborate with because I didn't have this internal sense that I was enough as an artist to go out there and actually start, building a fan base and earning money on my own. And it really turned into this push after I had a health scare. I had my first daughter. I had spent time in the hospital. It was all those things kind of life, strongly tapping you on the shoulder saying, you need to make a change. You got too much stress in your life. You're not, pursuing your purpose. And that's how I made the transition into leaving my job in corporate finance and being a musician. And, I was home with my daughter, so it allowed me time to kind of figure it all out. But the problem was I was really still stuck in this music is a different thing from a business. Here I am a business major. I didn't understand that. And so I was still trying to pursue those quote music industry things that you hear about, like labels and a booking agent and a manager and things like that. And I thought that that's what I needed. And once I finally realized, hey, I could build a music business just like I could build any business if I were to start a bakery or a coffee shop down the street, or if I was to be a freelance writer, or, it's the same thing. It's the same concepts on how to build a business. And I just need to get out of that mindset that the music industry is different.
Wow. And, thank goodness for you. I hear so many times exactly what you said. I think I felt the same way, is that we become musicians because we're passionate about it, and we look for expert teachers to guide us on our vision and our passion for musicianship. And, when you said, here you are in the back office writing paychecks going, wait a minute, isn't it me that's supposed to be on the stage? I'm the singer-songwriter. And my heart just goes out to those starving artists that think this is it. And you're right. I mean, music degree in hand with myself, no one ever taught me about the business side of it. So thank you for offering the services that you do so that we can learn more. And I know your passion obviously is helping women as well. And Women of Substance Radio is really an important platform for promoting these female artists. So can you share maybe a couple of challenges and successes that you've encountered, in helping women become more visible in the music industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Women of Substance is crazy. It was born out of just my own hobby of loving female driven music and just kind of building my own channel around it just for me to listen to. And then it kind of caught on. And so then when I was touring as an artist, I met a lot of other females out there, and they were also struggling to be heard. And I would turn on the radio or Sirius XM or, later on Spotify playlists and just feel wow, how come only less than 20% of what I'm hearing is women? And so that's why I decided to create Women of Substance. It started out as an online radio station because that was what was popular in the 2000s. And then the 2010s, I moved it over to a podcast in 2014, and it is going strong. I am about to record episode number 1500 of this podcast, which is just nuts to me. And, we put out 3 episodes a week. And so the real, what we've done, I think, has really opened the door for women. And the biggest challenge for me when I was thinking about this is so here, what I want is to have equality for women on all platforms, but yet I'm creating a platform that's all about women. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? So I was this needs to translate into more women being heard across the board.
Yep.
And so what I finally decided was, yes, I am creating this platform to spotlight women so other people can see how amazing they are. And then maybe they will want to add them to their own playlist, their library. And eventually, because they've been seen and heard on my program, that it might get them seen and heard by other people that are going to put them on other, playlists and stuff like that, where they're going to get more equal representation. So it's kind of it's a hard thing to balance, because here I am creating this thing that's only for women, but yet I want that to translate into equality across the board. But it's been really cool to see how it's grown. I really think that we have made major strides in the industry since I started that in 2007. It's amazing to see just not only how many female recording artists are out there, but female producers, female managers, females working in the industry in general. And I think there was also a lot of closeted women that were too afraid to put themselves out there. And now they see a lot more people like themselves out there, being gigantic stars or even just indie, well-known indie artists. And, they're oh, maybe I can do this too.
Mm-hmm. I have a smile on my face as I'm listening to you, Bree, and thank you for supporting women in the industry. Quick story about my daughter, Sherry. So my daughter, Sherry St. Germain, she's a music producer, and she's in a writing camp, and they invite 5 writers into a room. It's in LA. There's 5 rooms, and they rotate every day for 5 days, and they have one producer in each room, and then, 5 different writers come in. And so she's been invited. She's been a writer there for many years, writing for big name artists, and they invited her to be a producer this time. So she's in there. She calls it her spaceship, and she's got her spaceship set up, and she's already waiting for some of the writers to come in who she's never met before. So they come into the room, and there's now four men, as you can relate, in the room. And one of them taps her on the shoulder and says, hi, my name is, whatever it was. And he said, you probably should get out of the chair because the producer will be coming in any minute. And she said to me, he said to her, honey, you should probably get out of the chair because the producer's going to be here any minute. And she was telling me the story, and she said, Mom, I did the slow pan, flicking my hair across my shoulder. I looked him straight in the eye and I said, honey, I am the producer.
Yeah.
So when we think about that, it's just mind blowing. You just assume, and it is a male dominated world in that aspect. And she's worked really hard and paid her dues to become the producer that she is today, along with being a multi-instrumentalist and vocalist and recording artist and whatnot. But I think sometimes we don't think, like, is it possible to have multiple streams of income? Because all of those things are different titles, and multiple streams of income is intriguing, and it's possible. And perhaps you could, give us a little bit of insight into, how did you come up with this idea? How can you give us some examples? Like, what would be an alternative income stream that a musician, such as myself even, or, my daughter, Sherry, that we could explore and say, yeah, I can do this and this and this and this.
Well, I think it was really born out of what I did when I first started, because it takes a while to, build up connections. I also had young children, so I didn't want to travel constantly. Like, I probably could have filled my calendar with performing, but I only really wanted to go out like 1 week a month.
Right.
Or I would do like a 2-week tour every 2 months or something like that. Because, taking kids with you is hard. And then eventually my kids got older and they couldn't leave because they were in school. And so I had to find other ways to fill my time when I was home. And, some of that was recording demos for other writers. So I just started networking with other writers, and a lot of them they were great writers, but boy, could they not sing. Yeah. They really needed demo people. And sometimes they didn't even have the ability to like arrange or just even make like just a plain, piano vocal demo. And so I would get paid for the arrangement side and the singing side. And then a lot of times they didn't know how to mix. So then I would start, getting paid for that. Or like I'd add on backup vocals and things like that. So, those kind of things stack. You got to think about, what are all these skills that I already have? We've all spent a lot of money and a heck of a lot of time learning a lot of skills over the years. And, how can we leverage those? Another thing would be, if you spent a lot of time learning how to be a great musician, how to read music, how to know your music theory, right? Yeah. Then you could totally be a transcriptionist for music. A lot of people need that. They don't know how to transcribe their music, but they've got people that want to play what they've written. So that's another thing you can do. For me, it was a lot of like learning how to produce from home. It started out me just wanting to produce myself. And then I started, when I was networking with all these other songwriters, they needed that. They didn't have those skills. And so I would do that. Then I got into like funerals and weddings. In fact, I'm doing a funeral this Saturday. So, it's if you're home and you're around, those are great things that you can do on top of all the performing stuff. And then, of course, teaching, as you know, that's something you can do as full-time, part-time. You can just fill in if you've got, just a few spots that you want to fill in your week, and you don't want to commit to teaching full time, that's okay. Because I found that when I was a performer, people would approach me all the time, especially parents, and ask me if I gave voice lessons,
Yeah.
because they would hear me on stage and they would think, wow, wouldn't it be cool if this person could teach my child?
Yeah.
And so, I never went that direction, but it's like kind of, these things just kind of come if you open yourself up to them and the idea of them, things like writing custom songs for your fans. Like once you build up a fan base, there's a lot of directions you can go with that. And even now, like for me, like I do some administrative work for other musicians because I enjoy it, writing emails and stuff like that. And if you're good at that kind of thing, boy, do musicians need help with that. If you're good at like
Oh, yeah.
admin, organizing, that kind of thing, that you had to learn, social media, that you had to learn how to do that for your own career. There's so many musicians that need help with that, that you can find, if you just network with a lot of musicians and just say, hey, like, oh, I noticed your website, blah, blah, blah. Let me help you with that, and just help them out with the one thing. And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, I need more help.
Yeah. I think that is so important, especially in this day and age, is to look for the experts that can help you get to the top of where you really want to go as a musician. And, I love what you said about diversifying. There's such good tips there, Bree, to say, yes, of course you can teach, you can do one-off sessions, or you can do, a music camp for 6 weeks, whatever you want to do to still live your life the way that you want to live it as a performer, as a musician, as a music producer. I mean, you wear a lot of hats in the music industry. Like, wow, you're just blowing my mind right now. And I know that you've turned your expertise, into presentations for conferences, and, congratulations again, best-selling book. What are maybe some of the insights into your signature framework? You've got the musician's profit path. And how has that really helped musicians find their financial success? Because our passion might be the music industry, but we also have to make a living and be financially sustainable so we can grow.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the musician's profit path that I wanted to get across is that there is a path, there is a progression, and you can't expect to go from 0 to 50, 0 to 100. And a lot of times we see these artists, we think they went from 0 to 100, but they didn't. They weren't visible all those years that they were paying their dues.
Yep.
And so, what you need to know is like, there is a progression of how your career grows. And that's why it's a path. It has 5 stages. And, you're starting out in the foundation, and you've got to put in the work to learn all the foundation stuff and build the foundation stuff. I mean, it literally starts with getting your first 100 people on your email list, because those are going to be your biggest fans and supporters. And like, a lot of times people think, oh, I need to get 100 strangers. No, like your biggest supporters are going to be the people you already know, the people that are your relatives' friends, your friends' relatives, people that you knew from high school. Like it's like gathering all those people and saying, hey, like I have this, I'm doing this music and I would love your support. And then moving forward from there. And so the thing that, following the path, it keeps you in your own lane. It keeps you from comparing yourself to others, because that can really squash our confidence. If we see that other people are doing this and that, and we're just thinking, why am I not there? I've been doing this for 2 years. How come I'm not there yet? And it can just really hold you back. So following the path and knowing that there is a progression of how things happen. And like, I'm a person who loves like lists and checking things off. And so the book literally has checklists at the end of each stage of like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And if you haven't, like, don't move forward until you do this other thing, because then it's not going to work the way, like, for example, one example is like, sometimes people, they decide, well, I'm going to run ads because I need more people to know about my music, or I'm going to get a PR agent and spend $5,000 on a PR agent for my first single. And the thing is that the things that those things will do for you at stage 3 are not going to work at stage 1. They don't belong in stage one because you haven't built up like a foundation of people that are going to help you amplify what you do.
Yeah.
And you're probably also not good enough yet, honestly, to be spending that kind of money on PR. Like people think, oh, this is the song. Like if you're a real musician and a songwriter, you're going to write 100 more songs that good or better. Right. So don't like throw all your eggs in the first basket. It's a sprint. I mean, it is not a sprint. It is a marathon, and people are treating it like a sprint. So that's where the path comes in that like you're seeing your whole career in front of you. You don't need to do it all today, but you need to make steps down the path to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Such good advice. I love the path. I mean, and you do, and it is a path and it's not ending, right? We just keep going down the path, but we do need to know what stage are we at. And I think one of the things that we've all seen, universally in the last several years, of course, is how the pandemic really significantly affected the music industry, where there was no live shows. Now what should you do, right? So how have you seen, and of course now we're back to live shows again, but it's really hit hard for a lot of people and musicians that counted on that. And even for educators, teaching in person, everything had to be shifted to online. So how have you seen musicians really adapt to these challenging times? And what advice would you have for those who are still kind of navigating this changing landscape and continue to do so?
I mean, I think it's been good in a way to push musicians out of their comfort zone and do things that were scary, because a lot of them did not want to perform, on live stream. Like I started going live on Facebook in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting so much pushback from people that were just so afraid to be on video online, and oh my gosh, like it's captured forever and all that stuff. And so it's like that, plus the fear of technology.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that it has really pushed musicians to be able to now be able to do so many different things that they couldn't do before. I know musicians that are performing every week on Sunday at like virtual church services as a job.
Yeah.
And that was not a thing before. And they can do it from home and not have to drive for an hour to this church that might be in LA and you live out in the outskirts or whatever, or across the country. And I think that it has also expanded what you can do with your teaching. As you know,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always have to be in person.
Yeah.
And, it might work better for certain people to do it online. And so now a lot of people have hybrid teaching programs, hybrid performing schedules. And so I think in the long run, it has actually expanded income streams for all of us. Yeah. And I think what it has done is made everybody realize how important it is to experience a musician in person and live, and how a live show is just like a whole nother thing versus just listening to Spotify or even watching an artist online.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really driven people back to that experience of live shows and just, actually being willing to spend the money for that. Yeah. And so I think that's also a blessing from the pandemic. I wish we didn't have to go through the pandemic to learn all these lessons.
It appears that we did. And I think we've learned them well. And I too, I love the aspect of a live show, because you take on a whole different vibe. It's not just what's in front of you visually, but it's the ambiance of what's on the left. And you can choose to watch the band play or focus on the vocalists or even the backup singers, or what's intriguing you, or just mesmerized by the crowd that's all cheering and standing ovations. And it is a completely different feeling to be there in person. And I think one of the questions too is just, when you're talking about all the things that musicians have to do, and there's a lot of them to really stand out, you do need help. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You can't be a solopreneur. And your Release Concierge program sounds like a really valuable resource for all musicians. And can you share a little bit more about how the program works and what kind of support it provides for the artists releasing new music?
Yeah, I think, the release period is one of the most stressful periods for musicians.
Yeah.
because you get one chance, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're only releasing it once. Like you may then release an alternate version or whatever, but you know, you've only got this one chance. And I don't mean to stress artists out by saying that, but you just want to plan, you want to be strategic, you want to be prepared, and you want to have all the people in your corner that you need to do it right.
Yeah.
And that's why I created Release Concierge, because before I had a program called Rock Your Next Release, and I would, you know, teach all this stuff to musicians. But what I found is that either like they'd get so overwhelmed with all the things that they needed to do around their release that they would just keep pushing off the release or pushing off the release and like never release it because
Yep.
and they were afraid of doing it wrong, right? Which I get.
Yeah.
But then like the other option was people would just be like, hell with it. I'm just going to release the whole thing. And, you know, I just want to get it out into the world. And then they
Yeah.
didn't take advantage of all the opportunities around a release. And sometimes they release their entire album and
Oh,
not, you know, take advantage of the possibility of releasing singles and all the ways that you can talk about your music and get it out to different audiences and stuff
yeah.
by you know, individually releasing songs. So that's why I came up with Release Concierge, because I was frustrated with, you know, no matter how much I was coaching people on this, a lot of times people they would get stuck. And
Mm-hmm.
they a lot of times they did need help. They needed like that person holding their hand, keeping them accountable, walking them through the release process, making sure they had a good strategy. They needed to outsource some stuff like, you know, PR, getting on some Spotify playlists, and they needed help with social media. They didn't know really what to do and how to do it. And they didn't, the social media, you really need someone kind of pushing you along and making sure
Yeah.
that you do it, because you do need to be
Mm-hmm.
consistent if you're going to build. So
Yeah.
that is what that program provides. It provides a personalized release manager and then a lot of help throughout the process on how to do things, and, you know, even some outsource items. So we just really wanted to make it like the one-stop shop for how can I have a successful release. And the thing is, you can go out and you can get a, you know, a PR agent for your release, and it will probably cost you the same as what this program costs. And this program is like all inclusive. So
Yeah. It's such a gift to the world that you're offering that service, because more than ever now, you just want to, if you want to be successful, you need to have a coaching program or someone that can put you on the path or give you the done for you shortcuts, because it's undaunting. And you're right. I've seen many artists who do, they either A or B, they put it on the back burner while they're trying to do all of this, which is learning a whole new skill set. Or B, they just release it and then it doesn't do well and they don't know why, because it's such a great track.
yep.
So your service is really needed. And I just thinking we're going to share some notes too in the show notes so people can, you know, reach out and get in touch with you. And I think one of the things, of course, that's just come out, you know, lately that we're either afraid of or willing to embrace, and that's the rise of all the AI stuff that's come out and the technology in music creation. And how do you see the role of these live performances evolving? Like, what steps can musicians take to, you know, create this authentic and meaningful connections with their audience and still embracing, you know, technology and AI and all the other cool stuff that's available out there?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I just released a podcast episode about AI. I had someone on my show talking about it,
Yeah.
and I am not there yet. You know, I am not like, oh, yay, AI, I'm so excited, right? What
Yeah.
I'm excited about is that AI is pushing us even more toward the authenticity of live performance.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so yeah, there are some tools in AI that are super useful. Like, honestly, I came up with the name Release Concierge by using Chat GPT,
Yeah.
right? Because I was like, this is what it is. Like, I just can't come, I'm really terrible at coming up with names. So something like that is really, really helpful. But just, it's not going to replace the authenticity. And I think it's going to make us even more crave the authenticity of live performance
Yeah.
and of actually communicating with an artist directly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we need to lean into that. And, you know, I was going to say around the pandemic, like what it did for me is that I had not been performing live much, like maybe a few times a year and on my church worship team for like probably 10 years, just because I had younger kids and stuff. But like the pandemic just made me realize I need that connection as a performer and as an audience member going to other shows. But like as a performer, I needed to get back into the ring and perform. And that's when I started working at the church job that I work at now. And now I'm doing 2 services every Sunday, and it's really feeding that part of me that needs that authentic connection.
Yeah. And you're so right. And I think too, when people talk about, using AI in their business. So for me, in the olden days, we used to call it an encyclopedia where you had to go look things up. And then Miss Google arrived, and then we used Miss Google. And so I think for me personally, I think AI is a research tool, as you said, that can help us sometimes just I use Chat GPT, but I create my own ideas and then just sometimes need revisions, or I call it an idea generator. So that can really help you in your business, even if you're writing a blog post and you just need a few more ideas, and just say, here's the scope of it, put it all in there, and then just say, give me 3 bullet points of, now here's all of my stuff. And then it'll just help you with idea generation. So I think there's a use for it, but I think the human connection is still there. You need to put your personal, this is who I am. We still want to be a human connection. So for me, I use it as a resource. Yep. Just as encyclopedias, Miss Google, we still need to know how to spell things, right? We're just going on and on. So that just is amazing. And you've done so many things. We're going to kind of flip over to your podcast, which I was so grateful to have the opportunity to be a guest on your podcast. And thank you again for that, Bree. The Profitable Musician Show. So it's a treasure trove. There's just so many, amazing ideas and insights and wonderful feedback from your guests as well. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Bree. Can you share a few of your standout moments or lessons from your podcasting journey that have really, stood the test of time, just kind of really have impacted you and your listeners?
So the first thing I do want to say is that I didn't even mention during the income streams conversation that podcasting is a great income stream for musicians as well, because we have these skills, right? I've already learned how to record from home. I had the microphone, I didn't need to learn anything new to start podcasting. Right. And you've got the ability, your stage banter, all of that you've learned from stage presence. You've probably done interviews for radio and stuff like that. So you're used to talking.
Yes.
So podcasting is like a really great way to use a lot of the skills that you've already built as a stage performer. And that's kind of the way I thought of it. Now, let's be honest. The first interview that I did, I was scared shitless. I probably sucked, right? But eventually those skills, they kick in. It's just like riding a bicycle.
Yep.
You're riding a different kind of bike, but you still remember how to balance and all that. So yeah, I love podcasting. Yeah. And with the Profitable Musician Show, I think what stands out most about it to me is that I'm just trying to expose every kind of possible income stream that's available out there.
Yeah.
So, there's everything from high ticket coaching to, getting your music in influencer videos on YouTube to, obviously our conversation that we had about expanding your teaching offerings.
Yes.
And, everything from there's kind of like a stock exchange for music, which is super interesting. Like a lot of these really interesting startups that they have where it's like people can invest in a song and buy a portion of a song. And so you can get more your investment up front versus waiting for all of your streams to pan out 3 years from now.
Yes. Yes.
People can invest in a song. So that's an interesting thing. There's one where you can crowdsource songwriting. So you as an artist can be like, okay, I want to write a song. And then people can send you different lyrics for the song and help you write it. And then you get to make money because they get to pay a little bit to like have their lyric considered. And, just really interesting ideas for income that you would never think existed.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the show is like, here are like so many ideas for income. And some of them are traditional and some of them are definitely not traditional. And just trying to make sure everybody knows that they exist.
Yeah. And that's really important because I think, even when you're listening to your podcast, like it's an idea generator, right? And it comes from people who have lived it, done it, and experienced it. And that's what I love about podcasting. I'm always learning, even as an interviewer, I'm always listening to my guests going, oh, I never thought about that. And I'm, taking notes and going, Bree said da, 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 and I'm going to implement that. And I love that. So thank you for sharing all of these. And obviously, successful musician and entrepreneur that you are, what do you sort of hear from musicians that are maybe common misconceptions or myths about this? Yes, you can be making a living in the music industry. What are some of the things that people think, oh, that's not possible for me?
I mean, the traditional ones that I'm kind of amazed are still around. When I started my first podcast in 2015 called The Female Entrepreneur Musician, I thought, wow, there's all these myths about you have to have a label to be legit and, you have to have a manager to be legit and those kinds of things. And I'm like, oh, those are going to die soon. Yeah. And they have definitely dwindled, but they're still there. I'm amazed at how many people still think that, especially about the label thing. And I know that I thought that when I was first putting out my first CD, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to have a label that's going to legitimize my album. And it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. A label is just more like an investor, and maybe in some arenas, it would help to have a label behind you. And if the label is good and they have a lot of great connections, it's really about who has what relationships.
Right.
It's not about like the same thing with a PR agent. It's not like who's better. A lot of the times it's, well, this person's been in the industry for 20 years and they built up all these relationships. So when they say, hey, you should feature this person, they listen.
Yes.
So I would say that it's not the institutions of label and manager and booking agent and PR agent that you need necessarily. It's the people behind them. And are they someone that are they going to champion your music?
Yeah.
Right. Like, just like people might think, well, I'm going to get my music in all these music libraries, but who cares if there's thousands of other songs in there? No one is ever going to pick yours out. You have to have a person that champions your music. So maybe you need to go out and find a licensing agent or whatever it is that you want to do, to a publisher to back you specifically.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I'm trying to say as far as the myths and stuff is people still think that somehow having a label is going to help you. And most of the time I find that it's not. And you end up having to do most of the work anyway, as far as promotion. So, people think, oh, well, they've got this marketing budget and blah. Yeah, they don't really.
Yeah.
You still have to, you are the biggest champion of your own music.
And one of the key things that, the takeaway for me here is just what you said, Bree, about building relationships and maintaining those relationships. And when people know, like, and trust you, and that working with this person has got a connection to this person, has got a connection to this person, that's when we can really grow faster. And you're right, having a label, I can speak for myself as an author, written over 60 books in music theory education. And I thought when I first decided to become an author that I needed a publisher that would take my books. And I begged and knocked on doors, and they all said, go away, little girl, come back when you've sold some books. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to become my own publisher. Like, why do I need some, and they were all men, of course. Why do I need some guy slamming the door in my face? I just crawled through the window and said, let's take this on ourselves. But it was about building relationships with people in the industry that I knew, could help me grow. And certainly when we see people such as yourself, you've helped so many musicians just in sharing your knowledge and, those that you've worked with. I mean, education is clearly really important to you, and it's evident in all of your various educational programs. So how do you envision the future of music education, especially in terms of like helping these aspiring musicians? They want to navigate the business side of the industry, which is completely different than their passion for the music itself.
Yeah, I think we went through a phase where courses were really popular and it was great. Like I love creating courses, but I think the pendulum has swung back to people wanting that individual help.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I'm focused on Release Concierge, because I find that so many people, especially during the pandemic, bought a lot of courses and then they didn't use them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they want somebody in their corner cheering them on.
Yes.
And so I think that the coaching is not going anywhere. I think that community as well, like if you can't afford coaching, community is the next best thing, because you can have a bunch of people that are doing the same thing as you and cheering you on.
Yeah.
And that's why that's where I focus in my business right now, is building my low cost female musician community. And then for the people that really need individualized help and are wanting to, make their next release the best ever, then that's Release Concierge.
Yeah. Wow. So exciting. So exciting. Thank you so much, Bree. How can people learn more about you and your programs?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I would recommend is go to profitablemusician.com. That's where you can check out all of our podcast episodes and learn about all the streams of income. But also on that front page there, you can grab your 39 little known streams of income for musicians. And that will also, specifically outline 39 totally different ways that you can make income from music. So I think that's the best way to connect with me. You can also definitely connect with me on Instagram at Profitable Musician LLC or TikTok at Profitable Musician.
Awesome. Thank you so much. 39 streams of income. I'm going to check that out right now. I might be missing like 37 of them. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Bree. I really appreciate you and all of your insights and sharing your journey, because obviously you're so inspiring, not only to me, but all of our listeners who've gained a wealth of knowledge from our conversation today. So thank you again, Bree. I really appreciate you being here.
Of course. I loved it. Thanks, Glory.
So till next time, here's to your ultimate teaching success with productivity and profitability. Don't forget to check out the resources that Bree's got for you, and teach with passion. Bye now. Thanks for listening to the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability podcast. Together, we can transform lives through the power of music education. I invite you to explore what's possible for your musical journey inside our UMT community. Simply join our Ultimate Music Teachers private Facebook group, where we network, answer questions, host live events, and connect on a deeper level. Here's to your ultimate music teaching success with productivity and profitability. Till next time, teach with passion.